Good morning. Come on in. Come on in. We're going to get started here in just a second. We'll give everybody just a few moments to kind of get in, get logged in. There's a little delay always in this show, so that way we give everybody an opportunity to show up and we can get started this morning. So let's see. Let's get this word out. And there we go. Good morning, chain breakers. Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Thursday, and I better get this right because I was corrected yesterday. I look right at the date, see it in my head, and something else comes out of my mouth. But today is Thursday, February the 13th, 2020. This is going to be a fantastic day because that's the way I choose for my day to be. I'm getting applause upstairs for getting the right date. Hi, I'm Brad Smith, and I am your host for Chainbreakers 365 Live and the creator of hashtag Uplift and Rise. I want to welcome you here today. This has been Love Week. It is Valentine's Week, all culminating with the big day tomorrow, Valentine's Day. So we've been talking about love all week long, and today is no different. We're going to keep on that same theme. But today I want to talk specifically about creating relationship with that special person. Now, maybe that special person, if you're married, that special person hopefully is your spouse. But if you're not, if you're single, we're going to talk about creating relationships, or if you got that relationship, deepening that relationship, that personal one-on-one relationship, that eros love, right? The Greek, what the Greeks referred to as the eros love. So we're going to talk about that today, and some of it I'm going to use Gary Chapman's book, The 5 Love Languages, because we're going to talk about that today. You see, a lot of times communication usually becomes the biggest issue with people in relationships, because frequently what you mean isn't what they heard, right? What you wanted to communicate isn't what they received. So we've got to figure out how to communicate in the same language. But I want to stop before we get too far, start saying hello to some people that have jumped in early this morning. Andy Strader, you were the first one in here this morning. Welcome. I'm glad to have you. Laura Berman, glad you jumped in here. Nat Banks, glad you're in here this morning. Connie Davis, glad you're here this morning. Kim Cardwell, glad you've jumped in. Bobette Lowe, you've jumped in. And even Leanne Brooks. Roy, we've got a lot of people jumping in today. So jumping in early. There's Susan Sherman. Glad to see you too. So we're talking about deepening that relationship with that special person, or creating relationship with that special person. And usually what happens when we're still in that dating relationship is it's difficult to find that relationship because we are so busy protecting ourselves from getting hurt. You see, in a lot of cases, we end up guarding that part of ourselves, and we really don't want to release what our feelings really are. We don't want to talk about what our feelings really are because we're afraid of getting hurt. We're afraid of those feelings being trampled on because maybe the other person isn't in that same position yet. And it can be it can be damaging. It can be hurtful. In a lot of cases, though, my opinion is I would rather deal with that pain up front and know right away whether this is or isn't going to work before I spend a whole lot of time in a relationship that probably may never happen. Hey, Tom Chavez, glad you're here this morning. Janine Hinkleman, glad you joined in. Janice Fetterspiel, glad you're here this morning too. So in a lot of cases, I'd rather be honest, be open, be upfront, be able to communicate. And, you know, the one scary part is admitting how deeply you're beginning to feel about the other person too soon, because it can, if the other person isn't in the same position, it can scare them off. So, you know, a lot of times we tend to kind of test the water a little bit, just kind of letting somebody know how much you like them, how much you really value the relationship, and hopefully they're feeling the same way too. But it's in being willing to be open, being willing to be honest. That's where you're able, because the real relationship starts being created when you can be honest with each other, because you can start now talking about a lot of things that are meaningful to you. You can talk about a lot of topics, a lot of subjects. You can be honest and open about your feelings regarding other things, and your conversations go from the surface or the superficial into a much deeper conversation, and therefore a much deeper relationship. But we have to be open. We have to be honest. We have to be willing to communicate and take that risk of potentially putting ourselves in a vulnerable position where we could get hurt. To some degree, that hurt is a lot better, or is a lot smaller. It doesn't hurt as much when it's early as when you've invested a lot of time and effort and energy, and your feelings have deepened. So it's better sometimes to get those feelings open and out front early so that you can know right away whether this is going to work or isn't going to work. But let's talk about being able to communicate. So now that we're in those communication positions, we're now open to communicate. According to Gary Chapman and the 5 love languages, I do want to talk about how we communicate that love to one another. Because what you need to be able to receive may not be the same communication or the same language that you show your love. And we all need to receive it in different ways, receiving it in ways that mean different things to us. So we need to understand what those love languages are. The first one that Gary refers to is words of affirmation. That's being open and honest. That's telling people how you feel about them. Maybe it's in giving compliments. That dress looks incredible on you today. You always make me laugh. I love your hair today. Wow, that outfit really looks fantastic. But make it a meaningful compliment if indeed that's the case. Sometimes it is simply letting somebody know that you notice. Letting somebody know that you notice what efforts they're going to, or how much that work that they do means something to you, right? Because what you'll end up finding is that if that is indeed their love language, they'll keep doing more and more and more of it, right? They'll keep doing more because they'll want to receive those same words of affirmation back in return. The second one, which my grandmother was huge on this one, it was acts of service. A lot of cases, my grandmother would go out of her way to do just even the little things for you. Cook those special treats, those cookies, those brownies. Maybe it's in fixing a special meal that she knew that you liked. Maybe it's just in helping you with something, or doing some cleaning, or whatever it was, something that she thought would be important to you. That was the way she showed her love to you. And she went out of her way to kind of do that. So in a lot of cases, yes, I enjoy receiving love in terms of acts of service, because that's what was ingrained in me very, very early from my grandmother, because I knew how much she cared. There's another one that takes place this time of year. It's around Valentine's Day, and for me, it's a kind of a twofer, because while Valentine's Day is tomorrow, my anniversary is Saturday. So frequently we end up kind of celebrating both at the same time, right? But it is in that receiving of gifts that becomes so important in a lot of cases. Letting somebody know that you value them enough to where you went out of your way to do something special, to absolutely give them something. Sometimes it's something small. Sometimes it might be something as simple as a note left in a lunchbox. But sometimes it's, somebody that travels a lot. Here's a good example. Somebody that travels a lot. A lot of times when you come back home, if you've got small children at home, what you tend to hear is, "Did you bring me anything?" Because what they're looking for is what they want to receive, that receiving of gifts that says to them how important they are to you. It is in that receiving of gifts from you to them, to your children, that tells them that you miss them, right? That they're important to you. And that means a lot to a small child sometimes. It is in the receiving of gifts or doing something special for them by giving them something is where it stands out. Sometimes, and this is and this is kind of a big one for me, it's that love language is in quality time. Now, to me, I open this up a little bit, and it's not necessarily quality time. Sometimes it's just in enjoying somebody else's company, being around them, enjoying spending time together. You know, sometimes it can be just sharing a movie together. Sometimes it can be sharing a TV show. Sometimes it can be playing a game, but it's quality one-on-one time that you just spend with the two of you, right? So sometimes it doesn't necessarily have to be that doing something special. It doesn't have to be that special date night, although that can be important too. But it can be, it's that special time that you spend just one-on-one. And I'm assuming from the likes I just saw from Nat Banks, that's an important one to him. But to me, also a big one, and I'm not sure where that really came from for me, but a big one for me is physical touch. I'm a very kinesthetic person. I like to both touch and be touched. Sometimes it's just a hand on a shoulder. Sometimes it's a patting on the back. Sometimes it's a shaking of hands. But when you're in that personal relationship, sometimes it's a hug, or sometimes it's in the cuddling up together. It is in that physical touch, that physical relationship that can tell a person how much they mean to you. And receiving that, both in giving and receiving of that, can be very, very big and very, very important. But let me tell you something else. Here's one to be careful of. That's also where a lot of kiddos can come from. So be sure that you're prepared for that when the physical touch is taking place a lot. So yeah, what we're talking about, regardless of which love language we're referring to, regardless of which love language you like to receive, regardless of which love language you like to give, make sure that what you're giving is what's important to your partner. Because if it isn't important, doesn't matter what efforts you're making to show them how much you love them. If it's not being received the same way, it's like you were talking a foreign language to them. Earlier I heard, do you tell somebody you love them enough? Do you hug them enough? Do you kiss them enough? Here's a good answer to that. If you have to ask yourself the question of whether you're doing it enough for the other person, then the answer is likely no. If you have to ask the question, the answer is likely no. If you question whether you're doing it enough, you're probably not. So step up your game. Figure out how to communicate their language, right? Because there's nothing worse than a couple going, I can't tell that you love me anymore. And somebody else says, what do you mean? I'm showing you all the time. It's that disconnect that can happen in a relationship. So make sure that you're communicating in the same language, that what you're showing or what you're giving or what you're expressing is being received. Because my friends, if you are the communicator, it's your responsibility to make sure the other person is receiving it. Just because you may say it doesn't mean they heard it. So focus on them. Absolutely, Susan. Susan Brierly is in here. I didn't say hi to you earlier. Good morning. Absolutely, Susan. Doesn't matter which of these languages you were talking about. Take the time to focus on the other person. You got into a relationship with them for a reason. Make sure that you value it enough to focus your attention on them. You'll deepen those relationships, and your relationship at home will be a lot better off for it. Tomorrow we're going to talk about again some more of just that one-on-one relationship. We're going to talk more on it from a spiritual level. But so I invite you to come back tomorrow for Valentine's Day, Friday morning, 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for Chainbreakers 365. If this has been meaningful to you, make sure you share this out to somebody else. Maybe tag your partner in this, right? Share this message to them on their timeline. Get this word out. But send it to your friends. Maybe they need to hear this as well. Maybe you've been telling them in your one-on-one relationship with a friend how important they are to you. Maybe you need to make sure that they're hearing it. It's a great way to kind of open up a conversation to find out how you're expressing it and how they're receiving it. So share this out. If you have trouble finding this show live, you can always find it on replay. You can go to my YouTube channel at Chainbreakers 365, or you can go to my website at chainbreakers365.com. But I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, 7:30 a.m. right here for Chainbreakers 365 Live. Thanks a lot, everybody, and we'll see you then. Have an awesome day. Bye now.